Russell Wilson is taking free agent visits. Cooper Kupp has officially been released, and we had plenty of more signings here around the NFL on Wednesday. Let's talk about all of it here right now. NFL Spotlight starts now. Welcome in. It is the Thursday, March 13 edition of the NFL Spotlight Show. I am your host, Ari Meirov. The new league year was officially yesterday on Wednesday. All those free agent deals, all those trades that we've seen have become official as of this recording right now here on Wednesday night. We were still waiting for a couple of quarterback dominoes to fall, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, but we did get some news about one of those quarterbacks and plenty of more action here on Wednesday around the NFL. Let's talk about all of it here today. Let me bring in my good friend Ben Allen. Ben, what is going on? How are you? Good to see you. How's everything going?
Oh, it's going well. I know we're going to have some quarterback news to get to, but let's go ahead and start with one of the pieces of information that we kind of knew was coming, but it was just a matter of time. Cooper Kupp has been released by the Los Angeles Rams. The Super Bowl champion was definitely, it seemed like it was in the tea leaves if we were reading them properly. We already saw Davante Adams sign there. Tutu Atwell got this nice big $10 million deal. Seemingly that all put the nail in the coffin of any slim chance he had to return. Kupp is likely going to have some suitors, but who are some of the early contenders to sign him?
Well, let me just start with this. The Rams, Cooper Kupp did the Rams no favors here. I was talking to somebody about this a couple of days ago, just trying to see if Cooper Kupp will get traded. He did them no favors when he announced about a month ago that he is going to get traded. Usually, whenever a team tries to trade a player, you try to keep it very quiet. You try to call other teams and say, hey, would you be interested in Cooper if we moved him? We're not sure if we will, but if we do, would you be interested? At his exit meeting, the Rams told him, hey, listen, we're probably going to trade you, but keep that quiet for now. But he went out, put out a statement. My time in LA has been great. They informed me I'm going to be traded. I won't be there anymore. Thank you very much. Once the league realized his time in LA is going to be over, no team for sure was going to trade for him. Like the Rams tried everything here to try to move him, get that salary off the books, get a draft pick, buy a draft pick, whatever it is. And every team around the league was like, why would we trade for somebody, take on that contract? And when we know he's going to get cut anyway. So that's kind of what happened over there. So he did them no favors, but it officially happened here on Wednesday, released. And this is the thing. While no teams were trying to trade for him, there are many teams who are interested in signing the former Super Bowl MVP. Last 3 years, he has not played a full season. Injuries. It's been an issue. So maybe he looks over here to rebuild his value of a one-year deal. Maybe he's able to find a team that will give him a multi-year deal. We'll see what that is. But I mentioned on my X page, the Packers are a team to watch. I believe the Tennessee Titans could be a team to watch over here. The Seattle Seahawks, who, of course, moved on from Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, they're an interesting team. The Chargers were one team that people were eyeing over here. They did sign a receiver late Wednesday night, but they're still looking for another guy. Maybe they could become an option. There are going to be teams out there that would be interested in signing Cooper Kupp. What the value is going to be, what the market is for him, what the final number is going to be will be interesting because to this point, aside from Davante Adams and Chris Godwin, the receiver market has been really slow. On Tuesday, we saw DeAndre Hopkins sign for 1 year and $5 million. That was a bad sign for many of these other veteran receivers who are up there in age who are hoping to get to 10, 11, $12 million. If Diop is selling at 5, that's not good news. So we'll see where the number lands over here for Cooper Kupp. But there are going to be teams interested over here, and we'll see if he decides to take any free agent visits as well as he tries to decide where his next home will be. But end of an era in LA, one of the great receivers in Rams history, Super Bowl MVP, Triple Crown Offensive Player of the Year. They move on from him, and they are moving forward now in LA with Puka Nacua, Davante Adams, Tutu Atwell, and that group of receivers.
All right, let's move on to the quarterbacks. The carousel continues to turn, and there are a few teams out there that still don't have a QB1, and that's where veteran guys like Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson are going to come in. Russell Wilson is obviously going to be taking some meetings. Aaron Rodgers is out on the beaches in Malibu taking a stroll. It seems like these meetings being set up that we've got here, we got the Browns and the Giants for Russell Wilson. Seems like they could be teams that actually are a decent fit. Do you think he's actually one of the favorites, though, for those two teams?
I would not call it a favorite. I mean, the Browns are going to have to sign somebody over here because Deshaun Watson will be out for the year. Kenny Pickett, they traded for. It's a good guy who has some, starting experience, but I don't know if you want to just hand him the job. Of course, you have the number 2 overall pick as well. But this situation is very interesting because last year, Russell Wilson also took visits. And I've heard from people that his visit last year with the Giants was more set up by his people than the Giants people. And again, like if you look back at the way the Giants handled the entire quarterback situation last year, when they still had Daniel Jones on the big contract, very, very messy. But from my understanding, that wasn't even Russell Wilson. That wasn't the Giants reaching out to him. That was him reaching out to them. And they were like, you know what, whatever, come by, make a stop over here. We'll talk to you. And they never really showed much interest. I'm not sure what the story is here when it comes to, is it his camp reaching out to the Browns, or is it the Browns reaching out to him? Is it the Giants reaching out to him, or is it he reaching out to the Giants? Is he desperate for work right now? I have not gotten to the bottom of all of this, but throughout the course of the last couple of days, as we were waiting for the entire quarterback market to unfold with Darnold and Daniel Jones and those guys, the Aaron Rodgers thing has been holding up everything. Everyone is waiting for Rodgers to figure out what he's doing over here. You mentioned there's a picture of him down there on the beach. The Giants, the Steelers, there's these rumors about the Vikings, which I'm not buying right now. I could be wrong, but I'm not buying it right now. But we're waiting for Aaron Rodgers, and I do believe the Giants and the Steelers, if they were to sign a veteran quarterback, it seems like he was their number one option over here with the potential price tag for him. But Rodgers, he does things his way. He takes his time whenever he wants to take his time. If you remember the last time Rodgers was available, which is when the Packers got rid of him, that took 2 months for the trade to even happen. I think it was the week of the draft when the trade actually happened. So these things sometimes kind of take some time of year. And Rodgers, free agent for the first time in his career, does he want to continue playing? Does he want to stay in New York? Does he want to go to Pittsburgh? If he goes to Pittsburgh, their schedule this year, by the way, has a game versus the Packers and the game versus the Jets. You could have revenge games galore. So there are a lot of options over here that we're waiting for. But for now, Russell Wilson will take these visits. Last year, by the way, when Russell Wilson was a free agent, he was signing for the minimum, $1.2 million. Now he could sign for as much as he wants over here because he's not being paid by the Broncos or the Steelers from his previous contract. So what type of contract is he looking for as well is part of this equation as well. And I'm sure Russell Wilson would want to know also if those teams want to sign him. Are you guys drafting a quarterback in number 2 Browns? Are you drafting a quarterback in number 3 Giants? Like, these are questions I'm sure he wants to find out. So this is all very, very fluid, I would say. There is no clarity on exactly who wants who, when will this happen. It's kind of everything is just unfolding in front of our eyes, and we're all waiting for it to happen and for the dominoes to fall. But for now, Russell Wilson will take visits just like he did last year. The Steelers, by the way, are still out there as well because if they don't get Aaron Rodgers, where are they going now? Are they going to wait for something to happen with Kirk Cousins? Do they circle back to Russell Wilson? So there are just so many moving parts with all of this right now, and it's truly a day-by-day situation. But for now, Russ is going to take these visits, and we'll see what ends up happening from here. It was the Browns and Giants over here. By the end of the weekend, you should be done with them.
All right, let's run through some of the other signings. There was quite a few that happened. Just give me a couple notes, nuggets, but let's go ahead and start with Kevin Zeitler, veteran lineman headed to Tennessee Titans. He's an older guy. Definitely got him on like a decent value kind of contract. I figured he would be going to a contender. Are you surprised that he's going to be going to Tennessee where he's likely going to be blocking for a rookie quarterback?
I mean, yeah, at this stage of your career for Kevin Zeiler, who last year, played for the Lions, before that, many years, with the Ravens, been with the Bengals, the Browns, he's done the tour of the AFC North, last year NFC North, and now he goes over to the AFC South and joins this Titans team. And they, of course, have a new GM in Mike Borgonzi, and Borgonzi has been adamant of fixing the offensive line. And they, of course, signed Dan Moore to that big contract on the first day of free agency, 4 years, $82 million. By doing that, they're able to move their first-round pick from last year, J.T. Latham, to the right side, which is his more natural position. So the tackles, he believes, are fixed now. They used the first-round pick on Peter Skoronski a couple of years ago. He will stay at left guard. They signed Laurie Cushenberry to a big deal last year. He's at center, and that right guard position was the one that was kind of up for grabs, and now they signed Kevin Zeiler to take that job. And this is a situation where he's going to be coached by Bill Callahan, who is somebody who, I could tell you this much, Ben, every single offensive lineman time in the NFL, respects Bill Callahan very much. One of the very best at what he does, and every offensive lineman is perfectly fine being around somebody like Bill. So he's going to join that offensive line group, and he's getting a pretty decent contract of year of 1 year and $9 million. Now, the kind of question that I have right now is, what do the Lions do by moving on from Kevin Zeitler? Last year, they signed Zeitler after losing Jonah Jackson. This kind of tells me that they are okay moving forward with a guy who they kind of saw a little bit of last year when Zeitler was injured. It's I'm forgetting his name. Chris Mahogany is the name. Somebody who they had starting last year on the offensive line, who they liked a lot. And it looks like they're going to give him the opportunity over here to start with Kevin Zeitler now leaving over here to the Tennessee Titans. So a very interesting situation. It does not sound like there were other teams over here that clearly were willing to pay $9 million. One other note over here, I don't think Zeitler was a number one option for Tennessee. From my understanding, I don't think this has been reported. I'm not going to say the name, but it was another guard that the Titans were targeting over here. And it sounded like they had a commitment from that guard. And eventually he turned around and went signed with a different team. So that is one thing that happened over here on the first day of free agency. And of course, they now pivot to Kevin Zeitler and got that deal done. So an interesting little nugget over here about what the Titans did in free agency.
All right, let's move over to Darius Slay. He's going to be heading out to Pittsburgh on a 1-year deal. We have been hearing this whole time about his interest to either return to the Detroit Lions or the Philadelphia Eagles, where he just won a Super Bowl. Why did he end up in Pittsburgh?
It's a very good point, and it's interesting because I think he was on our network, the Same Brown podcast, and he said, like, if I'm not in Philadelphia next year, I would love to either be back in Detroit or some way somehow maybe take a pay cut to stay with the Eagles. But the Steelers in the state of Pennsylvania, they step up and they're like, we'll sign you and we'll give you $10 million a year to join this team and be across from Joey Porter Jr. And at the end of the day, Ben, I think we all know money talks in this league. So taking a pay cut and returning to Philly, whatever the number would have been, he didn't want to do that. Going to Detroit, they signed DJ Reed to be across from Terrion Arnold, so no room over there. They end up going over here to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and it's a great defense to join. I mean, this is one of the better defenses in football. You get to be coached by Mike Tomlin. You're not switching any states over here. You're staying in Pennsylvania, going to the other side over here, and you're going to be now in the AFC North trying to compete over here in that very, very loaded division with Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, and we'll see who will be the quarterback will be in Cleveland. So it's a very simple situation where the money was just better than other places, kind of similar to the Kevin Zeitler situation. Nobody else was offering that money. He could have considered retiring now, but he said in Super Bowl week he wanted to play one more year. Lions and Eagles had not much interest of a lot of money. Go to Pittsburgh, join them. He could be maybe their Joe Hayden, who he also signed late in his career in Pittsburgh and had a couple of really great years there. So a bit of a comparison there of what the Steelers are expecting with Darius Slay.
I like that one. The Seahawks have been making a push to get away from veterans and try to get some of the young guys in there, minus, of course, Sam Darnold. You can call him a young vet, whatever you want to call him. But they brought in DeMarcus Lawrence, who I don't think necessarily fits that mold of what they're trying to do with these young guys. Are you surprised that they brought him in?
I'm not surprised. And I think like a lot of people are, I don't want to say overreacting, but there is a bit of the Seahawks are going to rebuild and reset. I don't really think they're doing that. I think the two big moves they made that everyone has been going crazy about was Geno Smith getting traded. They move on from him for a third round pick. And they essentially, because the reason they did that, by the way, was because he wanted $40 million per year. They were close to 30. It was such a big gap. They trade him and flip it and get younger and go with Sam Darnold. Then they move on from DK Metcalf. And we mentioned this on the show for a couple of weeks now. There have been these rumblings that something is going on in Seattle of DK Metcalf. As soon as he made his trade request, there was no pushback by the Seahawks. Like, they were like, you know what, we'll work with you. We'll make a trade happen. They moved on from him. I think they got a little bit tired of his antics. But you look at this team, like, there are a lot of really good young players on this roster. They had a lot of aging players, but when you look at the roster from Kenneth Walker, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Charles Cross on the offensive line, defensively, Devon Witherspoon, there's a bunch of guys on the defensive line that they're very excited about, Boye Mafe, and on and on. Like, there are a lot of really good players, Tariq Woolen. There are a lot of really young players on this team. They just extended Ernest Jones, the linebacker, who I know their head coach Mike McDonald is very high on. I think they believe they're still a very good team, and all that they did over here was flip Geno Smith into Sam Darnold, move on from DK Metcalf, and they're going to address the receiver position at some point. They believe Jackson Smith and Jigba will take a step up. And in the process, they added an extra third-round pick and an extra second-round pick. This is a team that has had some success over here drafting in recent years. So for them, adding DeMarcus Lawrence, who's a veteran pass rusher, missed a lot of this past season due to a significant lower leg injury. He comes in 3 years. The worth up to $42 million is doing a lot of work over here. This could be, I haven't seen the final structure over here, but this could be more of a 1-year deal with 2 team options, essentially, with how much money was actually guaranteed in this deal over here. So add him to that defensive line, another veteran presence, somebody who has been a great locker room guy in Dallas, and add him into this group as well. And they believe they could win this year. They won 10 games last year, the only double-digit win team not to make the playoffs last year. So I would push back a little bit on Seattle just, rebuilding, resetting, and I don't know, trying to get a good draft pick next year. I don't think that's what they're doing. They're trying to do over here. I think they want to be competitive next year. And this was a strategic move over here by them to kind of move off of some pieces, add some other pieces over here, and move forward into 2025. They're not done making moves. There'll be more moves coming up there in the coming days.
All right. Evan Ingram was cut by the Jaguars, but now he finds himself as a major target for Bo Nix and the Broncos. Broncos had a decent sized hole there at tight end. Do you think that they filled it well with Ingram?
Yeah, I mean, Evan Ingram, the reason he was released by the Jaguar, this is not a team that really was looking to move on from Evan Ingram because he's not a good player. It was $14.5 million in non-guaranteed salary, a little bit too much for their new GM, James Gladstone, new head coach, Liam Cohn. So they move on from him. And we heard earlier in the offseason, Sean Payton, the Broncos head coach, he was like, we're looking for a joker on offense because, of course, Nikola Jokic plays in Denver for the Nuggets. He's like, we need that type of a player in our offense. And Evan Ingram, who was with the Giants' first-round pick, didn't pan out over there. Some people labeled him as a bust. He has turned his career around in a really great way, and you could kind of play him wherever you want. You could put him in line. You could move him outside. You could put him in the slot. He is somebody who Sean Payton clearly has a plan for him, and there was interest for him from the Broncos. The Chargers had a visit with him. There were other teams who wanted to line up a visit as well, but the Broncos stepped up over here. 2 years, $23 million. A large portion of that is guaranteed, fully guaranteed for Evan Ingram. And he's going to be a fun piece into this offense over here for the Denver Broncos. So not a surprise and a little bit of a fun note over here. Davis Webb, the Broncos quarterbacks coach, was actually in the same draft as Evan Ingram, and they were drafted by the New York Giants. So former teammates now, one is a coach, the other is a player for that team. So a pretty cool story there.
It will never not be weird to me that he is already a coach because he's still what? He's like 28, 29.
Super young guy, and I'll just say it on the show over here. We'll come back to it in a couple of years. Future head coach in this league as well. He is super impressive.
Sounds like a spotlight guest to me. All right, let's move on to Dallas. Or, well, actually, it's more like Carolina at this point because Rico Dowdle is going to be going to the Carolina Panthers. He's going to be the co-star for Chuba Hubbard. He'll be the safety net there for Bryce Young. Dallas Cowboys already had a thin running back room. They just made it thinner. Are you surprised they didn't make a stronger effort to try to retain Dowdle?
It sounds like they didn't want to bring him back. And the reason I say that is because they paid more money for Javonte Williams, 1 year, $3 million, than what Rico Dowdle is going to get in base from the Carolina Panthers. That is 1 year, $2.75 million with the incentives that could bring it up to 6.25. So it sounded like the Cowboys were perfectly fine with moving on from Rico Dowdle, who had over 1,000 rushing yards last year.
And finally, let's end on a happy note here. We got a reunion in Los Angeles. Mike Williams is returning to the Chargers after an interesting season away from the team. It's going to be a 1-year deal, and he steps into a room that's now led by Ladd McConkey. How big of a role do you expect him to play for the Chargers and Justin Herbert?
Well, there's familiarity. That's number one. Obviously, he's been with Justin Herbert before. He's never been with Jim Harbaugh, so that will be a different thing. He's never been with Greg Roman, the offensive coordinator. That's obviously different over here. But the Chargers have been in the receiver market quite literally all offseason long. We heard all the rumblings about DK Metcalf. I do believe they were really interested in that. Metcalf's former receivers coach in Seattle is in LA with the Chargers, but the price was too high. Second round pick was not something they wanted to do. So they pivot over here, bring back a familiar face to the organization, somebody who spent 7 years there. And this is not an expensive contract. You see the worth up to $6 million. That means the base value is obviously less than that. In order to make all $6 million, he'll have to hit some incentives. So it's a pretty team-friendly deal over here. And I don't think the Chargers are done over here trying to add to the receiver room. I mean, another former Charger is still out there in Keenan Allen. Maybe we'll bring the entire gang back over here. But I think the Chargers are still looking to revamp that entire receiver room, because at times last year, Ben, Justin Herbert, it literally was just him and Ladd McConkey and a bunch of guys out there. So Jim Harbaugh knows that. He needs to fix that. And here we are now. They add another name over here of Mike Williams, and I don't think they are done. So he joins the Chargers. It's the second big offensive addition they made over here, also signing Najee Harris, who happened to play with Mike Williams last year in Pittsburgh, and now they're both together here in Los Angeles.
All right. That's all I got for you today. Make sure you guys have those subscriptions set up there on YouTube, turn on the notifications, all this, that, and the other. There's obviously going to be a lot of news still coming down. We're going to be following all of that in the coming days, as well as moving on through the offseason, heading towards the draft. Ari, unless you got anything else, I think we're good.
Yeah, I'm gonna add a couple of more news over here that did happen. I just, I was like,
Goodness.
I'm sure we forgot some things over here, but Mac Jones is going to San Francisco. Just a funny thing, because if you know people around the NFL, 2021 NFL draft, everybody believes Kyle Shanahan wanted to take Mac Jones over Trey Lance, and he was talked out of it. So it's just a fun story over here. Mac Jones is now the backup to Brock Purdy, and he'll be there with Kyle Shanahan, something that I think was supposed to happen in the 2021 NFL draft, and everyone basically told Kyle, we're going to look so silly that we traded that many picks for Mac Jones. So now they're back over here together. Some other things that happened in the NFL, we'll run through it quickly. CJ Mosley was cut by the Jets. I think we should mention that as well. Unbelievable player, all-pro guy, great man as well. Jamin Sherwood, they re-signed him, and Quincy Williams is there as well. They're going to be the new linebacker duo moving forward for Aaron Glenn. So some other things here that happened around the NFL that we probably should mention as well. But aside from that, that will do it here for our Thursday, March 13 edition of the NFL Spotlight Show. Free agency is still going on. There's still some other players we're waiting for, including those quarterbacks that we mentioned over here. Will it happen here today? Maybe it will, maybe it won't. And if it does or it doesn't, we will be back here tomorrow morning to wrap up the week and talk about everything else that happened around the NFL. So see you then.